Oh, I'm here with legendary singer Freda Payne. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, considering everything that I just had surgery approximately 8 days ago. Well, I might say, yeah, 9 days ago. It was June the 10th I had my surgery. I had a total shoulder replacement. So I've been walking around with a sling. Well, they call it a shoulder immobilizer, shoulder pillow. So I guess a lot of people who've had shoulder injuries, especially athletes and people like that, they're very familiar with those kind of things.
Yeah, I imagine like throughout your career, performing puts a lot of wear and tear on the body. Is that like, what led to you having surgery?
It's not performing, honey. It's not performing. I'll tell you what it is. Yoga.
Okay.
And also, and I don't want to put the blame on yoga exclusively. What's this that just popped up? I would have to say my genes. It's my heredity.
Okay.
Cancel.
So let's start from the beginning. I know you were born in Detroit, Michigan. When did you know like you wanted to pursue a career in, as a professional singer?
Uh, I was 13 when it first kind of uh, appeared to me, where I got the idea, and it wasn't so much my idea. It was other people telling me, "You're good. You should consider being professional. Using this as a career. Because I never would have had that kind of ego to presume that I was good enough to go ahead and be a professional singer. I was thinking about, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for a living? Should I try to be a doctor? Not that wasn't going to happen, because I didn't have that good of grades. And then I said, well, maybe I can be a nurse, and I was thinking, and I wasn't sure. But then when it came upon me, and I discovered that my singing was good enough, my voice, I can take these off. My voice was good enough to really take it seriously, and pursue uh, um, singing as a profession for the rest of my life. It's sort of like it came to me as just like it just appeared as like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start choosing classes. By that time, back in public schools, you could take music classes. So I start, choosing. You could either choose a music class, choir, music theory, or whatever, or you could take something else. I could take sewing. They had the different curriculums you could take. A lot of them, they've removed a lot of those different things now. Home economics. I don't know if they still have home economics anymore. And it was exclusively, I believe it was at that time, I believe it was for girls. And that home economics, that was where they taught you how to cook. How to prepare your vegetables right, how to bake. We learned how to bake biscuits from scratch, to do a cake, bake a cake, and make a cake from scratch. I don't mean out of the Pillsbury uh, cake, cake mix box. I mean from like taking the flour, sifting it, and then how to measure it properly. There is a way, by the way. And people forget, a lot of us, we don't do that anymore. Especially a lot of single women who are career women, they don't do that, or they don't have time to do it, or they don't want to do it. And I did, I learned how to make a souffle, how to learning that you how to cook your vegetables and not to overcook them, because you know pull the you pull the vitamins, the nutrients out of it, and how things like, oh, sewing. I had a sewing class. I wasn't so good at that, but I guess I wasn't meant to be a seamstress. But then I had modern dancing. There was modern dancing. That was a curriculum that I chose. We had gymnastics, sports. Like in the summertime, we had baseball, and when the weather was good, we every day, let's see, Monday through Friday. Those were the school days. I was on the baseball team, and I was really good at that. and wasn't I was better at baseball than I was at basketball. I'll just put it that way. And yeah, and I was an average student academically, average. I wasn't genius by no stretch of the imagination, but I guess I was just a regular kid.
And you talked about like I guess gaining confidence, from people telling you that you could sing. I know like like from past interviews I've seen that you sung in the church, and then like I guess you do jingles. Was there like a particular moment like that gave you like the confidence and stuff like now I'm going to pursue a career, doing music?
Well, I had already decided that by the time I started singing jingles. When I sang in church, that was because part of going to church, and then if you sing, especially if they find out that you have a decent voice, they're going to want you to, they're going to pick you out and say, oh, we want you to do a solo next Sunday or something like that. um, I never was in the church choir, but I would occasionally be picked out to like get up and just sing a solo, period. And then I did TV appearances in Detroit. I was on contest in Detroit on TV. I came in second for a national contest that emanated from New York, and that was called the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. For people who are old enough to remember that, it goes back to the 50s. Ted Mack was the equivalency of American Idol or The Voice. These I call these talent contests on steroids today. So I came in second on one of those, and then from that point I started getting write-ups, and I got a big write-up in Jet magazine when I guess when I was 16, my first write-up in Jet, and I was astounded because I said, "Oh my God, how did they even know about me?" Little old me from Detroit, and they knew about me because I was on a national TV show, a talent contest. And see, the Jet magazine was the black-owned magazine out of Chicago. That was Ebony, which is still around today. Um, and that was the magazine where it came out weekly, whereas Ebony was like it came out monthly. And that was the magazine that all black folks, they always people got that was the magazine to get because they would talk only about what black folks were doing, whether it be political, athletic, entertainment, or otherwise. And at the end they had a page at the very back of the book of the magazine. There was a page where they noted any person of, let's say, of color, African American, whoever was appearing on a national TV show, they would have them listed. That's how it was, because that's how infrequent black folks were on TV. And nowadays, it's like, I mean, you don't forget about it. We're in commercials. We got uh, talk shows, everything,
And so
drama, movies, everything.
I guess at some point you get chosen to be in the Duke Ellington band and you go out to Las Vegas. And I've seen like a previous interview where you were talking about how you were surprised that you couldn't find a room on the strip even though you were performing there.
I was my mother and a man by the name of Mac Ferguson. Uh, and we drove. Mac Ferguson was one of my first mentors, and he was a pianist, a wonderful pianist. And we did some little jobs around Detroit, little private things, and maybe little supper clubs. And then Mac would just work with me, rehearse with me, and he would coach me. And he said, Freda, learn as many standards as you can. He said, I'm talking about the American Songbook. The American Songbooks would be the music of George and Ira Gershwin, Cole Porter, um, all the great Rogers and Hart, Johnny Mercer, just keep Duke Ellington, W.C. Handy, all these the great songwriters of that era. And so he was It was my mother and I and Mac, and we drove from Detroit to Las Vegas, which took us about 2 days because, of course, we did stop and stay at a motel because it was, you needed to get some rest, some sleep. And by the time we arrived in Vegas, it was, I'll never forget, it was like about 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And we drove down the strip, and I swear to God, I felt like I was in a big show, a big dream sequence, because it was so much there was the elite, the lights and everything, and um, the neon, and every hotel, it was all lit up. And I mean, that strip, it was sort of like it was like it was like an oasis in the middle of the desert, an oasis of light. And that's what the strip was like back then. And we're talking in, this is 1961. So we arrived there, and so we said, well, we better find a motel to book, a couple of rooms. So we saw these different motels, and we would stop at one. Mac would go, it would say vacancy. Mac would walk in, come back out. They said no vacancy, but the sign says vacancy. So we moved on to another one. He went in, came out, same thing. He said, I don't know what's going on. See, we were from Detroit, so there was no segregation in Detroit, so we weren't hip to that. Although we were very, very aware of the southern states, because we drove through Texas and other, different states like that, where we did experience, we couldn't eat in a regular restaurant that was a white restaurant. You couldn't eat, you had to go and get something, take it out. You couldn't sit down and be served, believe it or not. But it was like that. And we understood that part. But we thought Las Vegas would be cool, because Vegas is gambling and, what do you call it, Sin City. We thought, okay, they're probably more lenient, but they weren't. Except you could go into the casinos, you could gamble, and as a Black person, you could perform. Okay, you could perform, but you couldn't stay on the strip in the hotel or the casino. You couldn't, live on the strip if you were working there. So we went to Vegas because of Duke, and my mother, we saw a guy walking down the street, a Black guy, and I guess he was working at one of the hotels, because he looked like he could have been a janitor or something, or maintenance guy. And we stopped and we said, hey, what is happening? We're just tired, and we drove in from Detroit. And then my mother said, yes, and I'm with my daughter, and she's here because she's going to be singing with Duke Ellington's band, and he's at the Riviera Hotel. And isn't Duke Ellington staying at the Riviera Hotel? And so the guy said, oh, no, ma'am, he can't be staying there. They don't let us stay in these hotels. He says he's probably over on the west side. They call it the Dust Bowl. And he's probably at the West Motel. And so we saw, we went to one of those, a payphone. It's hard to find a payphone nowadays, but because almost everybody has a cell phone. But anyway, we went to a payphone, and we called up the West Motel, and we found out that Duke Ellington was staying there, and the whole band was staying there. And so we requested to book a couple of rooms, and we drove over there, and that's where we stayed. And that was my experience. But that was in 1960. By 1963, it had become, they changed I think it had been desegregated by then, and they were allowing, some of the rules had been relaxed and changed. And as you well know, remember, Frank Sinatra had a lot to do with that too, because he had Sammy Davis Jr. appearing along with him at the Sands Hotel on the Strip. And they wanted Sammy, they didn't want Sammy to come in the front door. And
I've read in this book, I forget what the name of the book is, but it tells the story of Sammy Davis Jr. is at the hotel, and he jumps in the pool, and they actually drain the pool because he jumped in it.
Yeah, and I know somebody else that told me a story similar to that. Gregory Hines and his brother, Maurice Hines. And it was Maurice who told me, because the Hines and dad, they worked on the strip as well, along with their father. And they used to open for Ella Fitzgerald and different acts like that on the strip. And I remember Maurice told me, he said, Freda, once we went to the pool and put our feet in the pool and we took a little dip. The next thing he knew, the next day they drained the pool. Unbelievable.
I want to ask you, what was your experience like in Europe? Was it the same type of racism? Because I know you
No,
toured.
no, no. That's why you've heard of these, like Josephine Baker, a lot of these entertainers who went to France, and she discovered a whole new acceptance of her color, of her race. It was like they embraced her. They didn't, look at her with disdainment or like that she's beneath them. They embraced her. They exalted her, and she became a huge star over there in France and in Europe. Also, some entertainers would go over there and just stay. They would live there. Um, As a matter of fact, I had a little experience myself to share, and this was in 1965, not that much longer from when the Civil Rights Bill was signed in the US. But this was in Stockholm, Sweden. I was booked to go to Stockholm, Sweden, and 1965, and I was there for like about 3 or 4 months. And I worked this wonderful restaurant called Burns, and it was a huge supper club restaurant, supper club, and this they wanted to keep me there. I recorded an album. It was called Freda Payne in Stockholm. You can still probably find it online, even though when we recorded it, it was specified that it would only be released in Europe or in Stockholm or in Sweden. But after Band of Gold came out, honey, that record, all of a sudden I saw it in the record stores. But anyway, a promoter wanted, he said, I want you to stay. He says, I'm going to make a big star out of you over here. He says, and the only thing that kept me from doing that was that my family, my mother, father, sister, uh, was still back in Detroit. I said, I don't think I'd be able to do that because I'd be too homesick.
Wow. So let's talk about Band of Gold. You mentioned it. It comes out in 1970, and it pretty much instantly becomes a hit record.
Yep, it wasn't instant. It was one of those things where it was the second single off of the album that I recorded. And the first single they put out was called The Unhooked Generation. And when that didn't do anything, it went to a certain point. It went on the charts, but it didn't move up. I think I don't know I don't remember what the number was it went to on Billboard, but uh, by by 1970 they released Band of Gold, I think in February, and it started to like it was slow. It was slow, and then all of a sudden it started to pick up, and every week it would just move a few more points, a few more points, a few more, till finally it became, by the summertime, it was a bona fide hit and a gold record.
That's incredible. A lot of people in my generation, they know your voice from Styles' Peace song, "I Get High." I wanted to know, like, how did you feel about being on, like, such an iconic weed anthem?
Well, I'll tell you what, they sped my voice up till I sounded like Minnie Mouse, and I'm not exaggerating. And other than that, that would not be an exact. I mean, it's nice that the young kids, I'd say the kids like uh we call them millennials or the teenagers, that's how they came to know my name, but they didn't really know me as an artist or a singer. Now, if it provoked them to say, well, let me check this out and see what other stuff she's got out, you know, because I Get High on Your Memory, the way Styles did it, he distorted my voice. So how are you going to know what kind of singer I am if your voice is distorted? So, but the song in its originality is really nice. I mean, the actual song is really nice. I Get High in Your Memory.
Yeah, and people like really need to check out your music. You have like a wonderful catalog. Obviously in the Hall of Fame for soul music, and you recently released the EP, "Let There Be Love." Can you talk about like recording the EP?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, most people know me as a R&B soul singer, which is really not the actual, although I am, that is not where I live. I did not start out singing soul music. I started out singing jazz. I sang jazz when I was a teenager. I was more cabaret, like the cabaret singers, and Broadway type singing and cabaret nightclub singing, blues and American songbook type stuff. And then I moved to New York when I was 18, and then I started to realize, I said, even though I'm working nice supper clubs, but everything I earn, I put right back into my career with gowns. I got to pay for arrangements. I got to pay for my living expenses. I said, I'm not really, where, I mean, how far can I go in my career just staying on that level? So I, it just God is good because it was just meant to happen. Uh, a schoolmate of mine was visiting New York, and we got to speak, we got to talk. Um, I was living in New York, and a friend of mine who lived in the next high-rise apartment building on Central Park West, she called. She said, if old pal of yours is visiting me and he wants to say hello. And so that person happened to be Brian Holland of the producing writing team of Holland, Dozier, and Holland. And I said, hey, Brian, how are you doing? I haven't seen you since high school. And so I see you're famous now, Brian. And he said, oh, well, we're doing all right. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, he says, are you on a record label now? I said, I was on ABC Paramount, and also Impulse, because my first album was a jazz album recorded in 1963. And so there's the proof in the pudding right there. So oh, that's my sister. Hi, Sherry, I'm doing a Zoom. Oh, okay. Copy later. Bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, that's my sister, Sherry. So anyway, let me turn off. So anyway, he said, are you still signed with ABC Paramount? I said, no, that contract ran out. And then he said, are you being managed by anybody? I said, not right now. I said, I was with Joe Scanduri for 5 years, and I didn't want to continue with him. So that ran out too. So he said, well, that's perfect. He says, why don't you come with us? We just left Motown. And matter of fact, we're suing them. And we formed our own label, and it's called Invictus. I said, well, anyway, I said, wow, I'm shocked that you guys left Motown. He said, well, that's another story. But anyway, he got me on the phone with his brother, Eddie Holland. And Eddie said, well, we'd like to fly you out back to Detroit and talk about signing you and recording you. And so I said, yeah, okay. Now, part of that team is Lamont Dozier. I went to school with Lamont, matter of fact, 3 years, middle school. For 3 years, we were in the same homeroom together. So it was all, you might say, family, from Detroit, everybody that knew everybody. And it was coming back to me. And so I went back to Detroit. I signed with Invictus. We started recording, and the rest was history.
Why in 1973 did you decide to leave Invictus? And I guess you went to ABC Dunhill and Capital.
Well, unforeseen at the time. After I had Band of Gold, and then a year later we followed up with another gold record. That was Bring the Boys Home. I started. There were some little things I wasn't really pleased with because of the fact that I had learned a lot more through travel, through experience, through more worldwide knowledge. Some things I couldn't let just go by. I couldn't let just slip by because I realized that it wasn't, it didn't seem right to me, and I didn't like the direction it was going in. Now, if I had stayed, there probably would have been maybe another hit record or two, but I was at the point where I just couldn't stomach it because I wasn't getting paid my royalties. And I guess you've heard this over and over again, even by, artists like Toni Braxton. Remember, there was a time when she had a problem herself, and you keep hearing about this over and over again. And so it's nothing. It's not new. It's old. It goes way back. And so other things were going on, and that I wasn't happy with, and I was an emotional um, I was emotionally distraught about it. So finally, I said, well, I'll just put this in God's hands. And what happened was I was able to meet someone who helped me uh, obtain lawyers who were quite really powerful out here in LA, in Century City. And I sued them. I said, well, okay, I'm going to go back west, and you'll have to suffer the consequences if you don't level off with me. I said, at least make me feel good about it. I said, at least if you don't want to pay me my royalties or whatever, at least do something, just don't do nothing. And I don't want to speak anymore about that.
I understand. And by the early '80s, you're transitioning more into acting. You're doing stuff on Broadway. Like can you talk about like the duties of like having your own talk show, like Today's Black Woman?
Yeah, I had a talk show that was in 1981 and 82. I did it for 2 years, and it was in New York. And then I did some on location shows out here in LA. And yeah, I did that, but I didn't want to continue it because I felt like at that time this was just before Oprah came on the scene, and I said to myself, well, if Barbara Walters was a singer, she'd be singing. She wouldn't be doing. She would be a talk show hostess. I said, I want to sing, because having a talk show, by the way, it's not easy.
Right.
And it's very time consuming. You got to do your homework. You got to, when you have certain subjects every day, and see, this was only once a week. Now, can you, like Oprah, and now we got Tamron Hall. Can you imagine? They don't have a life because you got, and they're 5 days a week. So they're constantly, doing their homework. They're constantly, being involved in the show. It's like there's no rest, unless, of course, when you do your shows, when the segment is over, when you've done so many shows, and then you have a hiatus, then that's different. Then you get a chance, like go on a vacation or you do something else. But I saw that it was, I'll tell you one thing. It was very educational and very enlightening. Especially dealing with the different subjects you have to deal with. Yeah, you learn a lot. It's very educational when you have a talk show.
And in the mid '90s, you released a couple albums. One, the Dove Music, An Evening with Freda Payne live in concert, and it had your sister on there, Sherry Payne. So, was that the first time you guys got to work on a commercial project together?
Actually, it was the first time, and then we worked on another project. I did Christmas with Freda and Friends, and Sherry was on that too. We did two duets together, and along with O.C. Smith and Mel Carter, Cuba Gooding Senior. Yeah, that was a good one. Oh, and then again, did we you asked me about my new EP?
Yeah, yeah, I did. I
And then I
you have
got
a host of
diverted.
collabs on that, Johnny Mathis. Like, I really enjoy that song.
Oh, they can't take that away from me, George and Ira Gershwin. Yeah, this was done at Capitol Records. We did this before the pandemic,
Okay.
and it was at Capitol Records, Studio A, with a 18-piece orchestra and strings. And we did They Can't Take That Away from Me. And then I did a duet with Kenny Lattimore. And that was also with the big band and strings and at Capitol. And we did Let There Be Love, the old Nat King Cole song. Let there be you, let there be me, let there be oysters under the sea. Okay, let there be rain, let there be cuckoos and occasional rain, chili con carne and sparkling champagne. And that's a hot one. That's the title of the album. Do you have it?
I've listened to it online, and I haven't bought it, but I've listened to the whole album. It was incredible. I see that it's climbing, like, the jazz charts. It's number 28. You had posted on your Instagram like about six
Oh,
days.
my darling, you are behind times. That was like 28, like, let's see, 28. Then it went from 28 to, what's that, 23. No, wait. It's 21 now.
Wow.
It's 21. It started at 140, then it went to 70, I think 78, then it went to 48, and then it went from 48, it went to 30 something, 31, then to, let's say, 28, and then 20, let's say now it's 21. No, it was 23 last week, now it's 21.
You have like all these incredible accomplishments. Obviously, being on the cover of Ebony, being on the cover of J, being in the Soul Music Hall of Fame, being a Dame of Malta. What drives you now? Like,
Um, just, I would say, it's so funny you said that. I just said one word pop, survival, survival. Yeah, just like Gloria Gaynor said, I will survive. Yeah.
definitely. What's next for you in your career?
Uh, well, I just did a small part, an acting role on one of those TV episodic series that's on Netflix. It's called Family Reunion. And I think that segment I did is going to air in October of this year. And we did it this past January at Paramount Studios. So it's Family Reunion, and
Is
that's going to
acting
be.
a passion of yours? Where is that compared to singing? Because you've had
Well,
some pretty
uh,
good roles. You worked with Eddie Murphy on the Clumps, right?
yeah, Nutty Professor, the Clumps. I had the cameo roles. I've done little roles, not but major roles, but small roles. But like they say in acting, there's no such thing as a small role.
That's very true.
Hmm.
Thank you so
But
much for.
I've done acting a lot. I mean, I've done a lot of theater. I did the uh, theater, a piece called Ella Fitzgerald, First Lady of Song, where I portrayed Ella Fitzgerald. And I've done that 3 times. The first one, it was in 2004 in New Brunswick, New Jersey at the Crossroads Theater. And then the second time was in 2014. And that was in Alexandria, Virginia at Metro Stage. And these were all regional theaters, equity theaters. And I just did it in 2018 in Wilmington, Delaware at the Delaware Theater. And we did it's a play, but of course, being it's about Ella, it's got music in it all throughout it. But it's a play with dialogue and everything. And of course, I wore a fat suit because Ella was quite larger than I am, and the little short wigs. Yeah, it was great. I got great reviews, by the way. I always got great reviews.
That's incredible. Is Broadway? I know, like it's like a really hard work. People like like say it's like from doing television. Has that been your experience?
Say that again.
Broadway, the work ethic is like a lot more challenging than television, than episodic TV. People say.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, Broadway is hard. You're totally indulged. And also TV. I would say they're both hard in a way, because you know why? Because they both demand your full attention, a lot of your time. And especially if you're on a Broadway show that goes on for like a whole year or more, then I'll put it this way, honey, at least you're getting a check every week, you know.
I,
and and you're adding to your forthcoming pension plan.
I was reading an interview, and you were talking, I guess, about how Barry Gordy was actually like your manager like early on, and I guess like it was a conflict, I guess, over the contract with your mother.
Well, what happened was I was 14 years old. I was Barry Gordy's first female protege as a teenager, before there was a Motown, before there was Tamala Records. And I was the first one that he wanted to work with and groom. And he wrote songs for me. He wrote 4 songs just for me, which I recorded. And we recorded them at a place called United Sound, which was located in Detroit on West Grand Boulevard, right down the street from where Hitsville is located today.
Wow.
And we all, we went to, he took me and the master tapes to New York. And he wanted to get it. I think he was trying to get a deal with me with Roulette Records. So he had a meeting with Morris Levy. And when he got back to Detroit, he and my mother sat down in our living room, and I remember sitting on our staircase right off the living room, and I could hear them talking, and they'd go back and forth and back and forth, and it was like negotiating back and forth. And my mother was unrelenting, and he would not give in, and she would not give in. And so nothing happened. It was a stalemate, and I never signed. Simple as that.
What are your thoughts about like Detroit? Like, I mean, I imagine it's a pretty different city from the time you grew up in. Like last year, I think Detroit, it actually led the nation in violent crime, according to the FBI report. Like, you know, what was the experience like, of the Detroit that you grew up in, and the Detroit that it is now?
The Detroit that I knew when I grew up does not resemble the Detroit of today. The Detroit back when I grew up was a great metropolitan city. And you didn't have the crime and the violence that we know and we hear about today. That's all I can say. And then when they had the riots, the big riot back in 1967, that changed a lot. That changed a lot of Detroit. But all I can tell you is that I had a wonderful childhood. I had a wonderful experience, growing up in Detroit, up into through my teen years, up until 16 or 17 years old. And matter of fact, I talked to a cousin of mine yesterday, and he was telling me how the violence has increased. I mean, he says insanity. It's like people are going. This pandemic has people who were already crazy. It's really like escalating now. You know. These freeway shootings and things like that, and innocent people just being killed for. Kids, children, for nothing. Innocent people who have not. You're just driving home or whatever, and people just get ticked off for almost nothing. like, okay, you wearing a mask, you not wearing a mask, you get into a fight. And I just don't understand it.
With the pandemic, going on for like the past year, how did that affect how you move like in your life, your own personal life?
Well, just like everybody else, it's like, remember that old line they came up with, we're all in this together? When it happened a year ago, back in March, it was like, well, this is like, I don't know. It's like something out of the Bible where, the book of Revelations, where they say, uh, this is what's happening. The world is beginning to change. But I never foresaw it coming. I always felt like, oh, this is going to happen another 20 years from now. This is not going to happen anytime soon. But guess what? It's happening now. And the thing is that you have to, trust somebody and the scientist. And we were kind of encouraged but misled by the former Trump administration, by Trump telling people, oh, this is going to just go away or disappear. And to me, that was either out of fear or trying to maintain control over not trying to panic the public. But at the same time, what it is what it is, and reality is reality. And when it comes to something like this that could hospitalize you and kill you, it's not about trying to, like, keep everybody happy, or trying to say, pat them on the back and say, oh, it's going to be all right, when that person is dying, you know. But what I'm saying, I'm saying that to say that when you know how serious something is, you had better start making preparations or doing what you're supposed to do to keep yourself safe. And that's all I need to say about that.
Yeah. Do you see
But
it?
all, but the thing is that, see, the thing about that is, like, it cut off a lot of people lost their jobs or had to quit their jobs. They wanted you to stay home. All my gigs were canceled that I had last year, and except for actually for one or two that happened before the pandemic hit. And then I actually did a gig last November in Baltimore, Maryland, but it was under restrictive conditions, and that was the only. But that was it. That was it. And thank God for, let's say, the unemployment situation. Um, uh, the EDD, that helped. That helped out a lot of people. That helped a lot.
Do you see things returning back to normal in LA? Like I guess like they're reopening a lot of places and stuff and everything are taking a
Yeah, I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it. But now, I guess you watch the news, or you should at least once a day or something. I watch it a lot. Some people say you shouldn't watch the news. It only gonna, like, stress you out.
right.
And I remember my friend Dick, the late Dick Gregory, used to tell me that. I says, I don't watch the news. I said, well, how do you know so much? Yeah, that man he turned me on to a lot of great things. He knew a lot about health, and of course a lot about conspiracy theories and other
Right.
things. But he was a great man, and I am privileged to have known him, blessed to have known him.
And
But
you was dedicated to civil rights is one of the things and stuff.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
I remember hearing a story about like where he got this big check and like instead of like sending it home to his family and stuff he gave it to the movement. And I thought like and stuff everything that putting his money like where his mouth
His
is, so to
mouth
speak.
is, yeah, yeah.
That's
He's a
incredible.
good man. He was a good man. We became friends.
Wow, can you share a story with Dick Gregory about him?
Oh wow, let's see. I go back. I don't have any particular, like, anything dramatic to say.
Just anything like something that about his memory that that maybe like a little bit humorous.
Well, all I can say is that he basically turned me on to a lot of good stuff. He was into like health and alternative medicine and techniques and stuff like that. And he actually turned me on to some healthy things to do, global cardio, EECP, a it's a thing where you have to go to a particular clinic, and you get on a table and they strap you in, and they strap you in, and the straps start pumping you, and what it pumps the blood through your veins and your capillaries, and up through your heart. And what it does, it literally oxygenates your body, and it clears out the arteries. So if you have a heart condition, or if you have clogged arteries or a blood clot, high blood pressure, it what it does is that it helps to alleviate all of that. So, and then he turned me on to another thing, was called calibration. And it's like a machine, a computer, and they strap you up like your ankles, your wrist, and they put a band around your forehead, and you're in tune with this computer that's programmed to detect everything in your body. Let's say if you're totally healthy, it'll print it all out that you're totally healthy, you don't need anything, but it'll tell you if you have allergies, um, what foods you should eat, what foods you shouldn't eat. It's even able to detect your mood swings. It tells you if you have any underlying diseases like cancer. It tells you if you have. It was able to detect that I was going to be getting arthritis, and at the time, I said I don't have arthritis. I said I'm fine. I don't have any aches or pains. I said I don't have any. I'm not going to have arthritis. They said, well, it's here. It said it's underlying. It's going to come. And about, I think a year later, I started in my yoga class. I started feeling a little pain in my knees. And that was like about 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And finally, it escalated to the point where last year, a year ago exactly, I had to have my left knee replaced.
Wow.
Because of arthritis and bone on bone. And then I just had surgery on my shoulder. I had a total shoulder replacement a week ago. And that's because of severe arthritis, bone on bone. So all I can say is that you can't fool Mother Nature. So that's heredity. That probably comes from my mother's side, I believe. I think it comes from my mother's side.
Wow. Like, what was it like to work with, like, the all the people that you had on your EP, from
Oh,
Johnny
that was a
Mathis.
dream. That was a dream. First of all, the first one we recorded with that day was Kenny Lattimore. And Kenny, oh my God, he's a sweetheart. He's a beautiful man. Matter of fact, he just got married and to this lady who's a judge. So I think he did well. I think he did well. I think he's gonna be okay with this lady. And anyway, we did Let There Be Love together, and he did a great job. And then after he was finished, in walks Johnny Mathis. And I was so happy to see him because I was thinking, oh my God, I got Johnny Mathis. I can't believe it. What if he cancels at the last moment? What if something happens on the way to the studio and he can't make it? And when he walked down that hall and into the studio, I was like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. And that was wonderful working with him. And then Dee Dee came, Dee Dee Bridgewater, and then she came in and we hugged because we go way back. And it was a joy working with Dee Dee because with Dee Dee, we did more jazz tunes. We did two songs. We did Moanin' and Doodlin' together. It was intertwined. It was all my idea. I picked those songs. and the arranger is Gordon Goodwin, and he did the arrangement on it, and it turned out really, really nice. And then the only one that wasn't able to get into the studio in L.A. was Kurt Elling, because he lives back east in New York, and we find so he did his um, in Chicago. He was in a studio in Chicago, and it was by Zoom, and that's how we did it.
And
He
I
did
guess you
his
guys
first.
were in LA. Were recording in Capitol Record Studio A, which is like
Uh-huh.
a legendary room. What was the vibe like? Like recording in such a legendary room.
Oh my dear, it was surreal, and I'll tell you why. That wasn't my first time. I was signed to Capitol in the 70s. So I've recorded in Studio A before in 1977, 78, 79. And then in 2014, I recorded at Capitol in Studio A. I was signed, I had a one record deal. I did an album that came out on Mac Avenue Records, the artistry label. And we recorded the entire thing um, in Studio A at Capitol Records, and that came out. And that album was called "Come Back to Me, Love." That's on Mac Avenue. So this was once again revisiting, I would call my dream studio.
What would be your advice to young people interested in pursuing a career in the entertainment industry, wanting to, follow, your path of, having a career?
Go for it. Go for it. If it's on your heart, if you feel that this is what you want to do, if you feel you can make it. Of course, I have to say it might be a little harder today, but it's totally different. I can't advise them because my journey is different from what their journey is going to be. And see, now we're living in a whole nother world of technology, of of all kinds of different things going on. Like for instance, the record business is not the same. It's not the same at all. You got everything is downloaded. People get stuff online for free. And of course you want to buy if you want to get uh, a, a regular CD, which some people consider antiquated, but some people still love CDs. And guess what? I guess you know this too. Vinyl has come back. Vinyl has come back, and I that gives me a ray of hope of sunshine, because that shows me that everything old is new again. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, like, the changes to the music industry? Like, even, I went to Best Buy yesterday, and like I couldn't, they don't sell physical CDs anymore. I didn't know that. Like I was like, looking to go buy a physical CD, but
Yeah.
that's become like, something of the past, like how things are changing with streaming. And it just seems, I interviewed Kenny Rogers in the past, like before he passed away, and like one of the things that he was saying was he felt that the music industry was just, artists like are just putting out singles. Is just everything's
Uh-huh.
about the single, and
Well,
like
it's
not.
all it's always been like that. It's like when you do, let's say if you do an album, you put out a single from the album,
Yeah.
you know, or if all you're going to do is a single, the single would be the teaser for the album, forthcoming album. But the single comes out first, and then you say, if you get a good reaction from the single, then you say, okay, now we can do the album, because they like the single. But most people do, from what my experience is, you do the album first, then you pick a single to put out, and then see how that works, and then if it works well, then or if it doesn't do anything, then you put out another one. you
What's
know
next for you in your career?
well, what's next? Let's say, I don't know at this point. All I can say is that I will keep on doing what I'm doing, performing, and also promoting this EP as well, and just keep maintaining my career. Oh, I forgot. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? I have a book. I have a book. So I'll be promoting that book this year. At this point, I think we're looking at a release date for the book in October of 2021, and it's my memoirs. The book is based on my life and my memoirs.
Definitely. I will definitely read it, and hopefully you can come back, and I'll definitely have a lot more questions for you. And I really appreciate you taking the time. You've had such a legendary career. I'll recommend to everyone to listen to Let There Be Love by Freda Payne. Just listen to your catalog. It's absolutely incredible. You're a legend. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm honored. And thank you so much, Freda Payne.
Thank you. I enjoyed this interview. Thank you, Ryan.
You have a nice day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.